welcome to the accounting live stream. My name is Wes, and I've got with us Lori. Lori, thank you for joining us today.
Oh, you're welcome, Wes.
So, she's the kind of person that doesn't like to be on these live streams as much as the rest of our team here because she's usually the one that likes to be behind the scenes.
I'm a background kind of girl.
But you are our resident accounting person when it comes to all things accounting. And so I figured if we're going to bring in the big guns today, we're going to bring in Lori as we talk about accounting. So we've got a lot of people here, and we've got the chat wide open. If you are joining us in Facebook, just know that we're not monitoring the chat for Facebook. So it is all here in Vimeo. So today, before we dive into everything, just a few things we want to throw out there. Our Facebook group, if you have not yet joined our Facebook group, that is such a great place to go to just to talk to other ChurchTrac users, just like yourself. Lori, the YouTube channel, that place is blowing up.
Wow, Wes. We have so many videos out there, and they're so good with the content that's provided, that they're instructional and helpful and in some ways entertaining.
Yeah.
You never know what you're going to get when you open one.
Now, when it comes to getting help, Lori, what is the number one way for people to get help in ChurchTrac?
The help button in the upper right-hand corner of your software. Under that help button, you have several options. You can create a support ticket. You can ask us questions via that support ticket. You can schedule a phone call. And you also have access to our user guide. And I know in most cases, Wes, user guides are useless. They're written in the wrong language. There's not enough information there to help you out. But ours is intentional. We actually make it useful intentionally.
Yeah, and if you ever get stuck, all you got to do is create a support ticket, schedule a phone call. So we make it really easy to get help. All right, well, Lori, we're talking about accounting today, and it's a whole lot to go through.
It is,
so we have a lot of content. So as we go through all this content, just know, like, if you do have any questions, we've got a team member in chat answering questions in chat. We are going to have a dedicated time of Q&A after we go through the mountain of content we have to go through today.
Yes, we are.
So today we're really going to be talking about kind of four things. We're going to talk about what ChurchTrac accounting is, how to get started the right way, I might add.
Please do it the right way. Oh my goodness.
But then we're going to jump into how to get the most out of accounting.
Right.
We've got some really great features in the software that church leaders love, and so we're going to go through some of those. And then we've got some tips of a few other little neat things that you can do with our accounting software. A couple are pretty recent as well that you're going to like. So is everybody ready to dive into some accounting? Oh goodness, this is going to be great. All right, so let's talk first about, okay, what is ChurchTrac accounting, Lori? Let me ask the question in chat. Has your church been using another software to manage your expenses and your income? Have you been using, I don't know, QuickBooks seems to be one of the most popular ones that churches come over to us from. Let us know in the chat what type of software you have been using, or if you haven't been using software, let us know. That way I kind of see where everyone's coming from. Now, what is it, Lori, that makes ChurchTrac such a great accounting program for churches?
It was written by ministers for churches because churches do unique accounting. They do funds-based accounting, which means there is a bucket, if you will, for your general expenses, your general income, and then there's designations. Those designations are for specific buckets of money, and that's the whole idea, is you need to get money into these buckets and you need to get money out of these buckets.
Yeah.
Without all the complicated uses. Okay.
Yes. Well, speaking of complicated, that's another difference with ChurchTrac and other programs, is this is a single entry accounting tool, whereas a lot of other programs out there, I know QuickBooks, Power Church, someone mentioned there, and a few others.
Somebody said ChurchTrac 9. Oh my goodness.
Oh wow, so you got an OG in the chat today, that's awesome. But a lot of those other tools, Lori, are double entry, which is great, but if you're the kind of person who maybe isn't like accounting first, you're not a CPA, and you're maybe the church treasurer, or you're doing this on the side, double entry can get a little confusing if you're not familiar with this realm.
Very much so, Wes. And double entry gets very confusing when you've been using double entry and then you come to ChurchTrac as well. It's a much simpler process, and it needs to be, you need to actually go through our user guide and get familiar with how ChurchTrac works versus what you've been using, so that you have an understanding, because they're not the same. And by trying to create and use them the same, you're complicating the ease of the program.
Yes.
There's a lot that goes on in the background that people don't see, and that's intentional. It's to make it easier and accurate.
Yes, and that's one of the biggest things is we've really strived to make this an easy tool for you to use, but we've also strived to make this have some amazing support to go along with it. That's why we've got all the videos that show you how to do everything we're going to be talking about today.
Right.
We have got a ton of videos showing you all this stuff, but we also have really been intentional about keeping this the most affordable church software in terms of everything, but accounting. This is the most affordable church accounting software that you can find outside of using a hodgepodge of Excel sheets, I guess, but anything's better than Excel.
And I'm actually seeing that even in our even in the chat, Wes. It's just Excel. Ugh.
Hey, Excel is great, but when it comes to church accounting,
it's not accounting.
The time you spend having all these Excel sheets try to talk to each other and everything and figure out all the formulas.
It's very complicated.
Yeah, this is a lot easier. So, Lori, let's dive into this. I'm going to go to the accounting screen here.
Okay.
And we've got a fresh account pulled up that's pretty much looking exactly like your account would be if you have not set up your accounting screen yet. So, Lori, I want to set up accounting on ChurchTrac. What do I do first?
The very first thing you do is you go to the help button and you go in and you watch the Getting Started with Accounting video and you read through that documentation. The reason you need to be familiar with that, Wes, is because there is language that's used in ChurchTrac, not expletives, but good language, accounting language, that we need you to understand what we're referencing as we go through these videos and even what we're doing here. So if you aren't familiar with the terms, it can be very confusing, and that's not what we want, okay?
All right, so I watch a couple videos and get familiar with everything. So then, what do I do?
You enter the accounting screen, and our first inclination is to let's just jump in and create some accounts. No, let's not. The very first thing you need to do is go to your Funds tab, and you're going to see there that you have a general fund in place. That is because all of your income from the giving screen and all of your expenses out of accounting are part of your general fund. Okay, this is not for designated money. This is also where your budget is going to run from. So don't delete this. Don't worry about changing the name. Use it, okay?
Now notice there is a $0 amount and it doesn't even look like I can edit that.
You cannot edit that, Wes. That's a good observation. But don't worry about that because we'll get to that in a little bit. Once you get your foundation in place, everything else literally goes bloop and falls into place. I know. I have my sound effects.
All right,
terrible person.
Typically, churches have more than just general fund.
That is correct.
And so the process of adding a fund, I click that Add a Fund button, and then I can just start naming my funds. So maybe missions is a big one. So I'll just select OK.
Now, Wes, what's going to happen is this starts triggering questions in your mind. Well, but I support multiple missionaries, and I have foreign missions, and I have local missions. It doesn't matter. This is a bucket, okay, if you will, a big bucket, that's going to house multiple categories. We're going to get to that in a minute. But you need these designations so that you can filter money into the right buckets, okay? Again, I use that term. It's explained a little bit more in our user information. Yeah. And if you deal with me or any of my staff, you're going to hear it too, but it helps with the understanding. So just go along with me for a moment.
Okay. So we create our funds. Now, I typically tell churches that if they have more than like 9 or so funds, 10 funds, slow down, reach out to us, just because there are a lot of situations where you can consolidate funds. You don't need like a multiple missions fund. You really just need one missions fund because you're going to start separating out those income and expenses with
your categories.
It's like we actually planned that.
I know, but we really didn't.
All right, so categories.
So what's really cool about categories is when you're using the giving screen, and yes, when you create categories, you are using them in giving and you are using them in accounting. They don't talk to one another, but they have multiple uses. So making changes here will affect your giving screen as well. Okay? So when you're creating your categories, you want to make sure that you have your income categories. Where does the money come from? There's general offerings. Some people designate tithes because they use tithes separate from general offerings. You might have a benevolence offering. You might do a love offering. You support missionaries. For your missions categories, you want to indicate local missions, foreign missions, Joe Blow missionary that you support that's in Africa. You've got one in Nicaragua. Keep going with this, but create what you need. You do not need a category for paper, pencils, copier paper, copier.
That's taking it to a level that's just too much
It's
detail.
office supplies. And then you can memo that transaction and put information in there once you're at that point. But you want to keep your categories specific enough to be usable, but not so specific that you are overrun with them. Okay?
All right, so let's create a category just to show everybody an example here. So I go to click add. And
Local
from here,
missionary.
So
Local
I'm going to
missions.
say local missions. Now, question, is this going to be all my income and expenses or?
Not typically.
Okay.
Now I say that for this reason, Wes. Sometimes, and this depends on how your church functions, some churches have in and out categories. That means the money comes in and they directly write a check straight out. Okay? You're not tracking this information. If you need to track the information, the income and the expenditures, you need an income category and an expense category. Yes, you will link that to your fund.
Okay.
Okay?
So then in this case, I would link it to my missions fund.
Correct.
And there you go.
Now you determine, Wes, if this is going to be local missions income, expenses, or is this a pass-through? If it's a pass-through, you want this to be an income category, and here's why. If you set the setting in your admin settings to hide expense categories in giving, you won't see an expense category. So if it's something that you're going to enter through the giving screen, you need to make sure that you can see it, income.
Okay. And if I wanted to, I could even make this another subcategory of something else. I can assign
You could have a
category
missions
numbers.
Yes.
And
you could have a missions parent and then create your categories underneath, and they would all be linked to the missions fund.
Okay, perfect. All right, so we've already gone through, we've made some of these categories here. Just so you can see, we've got like utilities and then subcategories of electric company, water company. Okay, so a church makes their funds. Then they make all of their income and expense categories.
Correct.
Next step, what do I do?
Let me point out something here on Wes. So click on the utilities parent category for me.
Okay.
Note here, this parent category is an expense. If you have multiple categories that are going to run whatever, it's either going to be an income or it's going to be an expense. You can't stick income and expense categories under one parent and make them work, because the subcategories are always going to take on the properties. It's what the right-hand side is of the parent.
Okay.
Okay.
And it's pretty common too, just throwing it out there, that I see a lot of people, they'll have like a missions income category, then a missions expense category.
Grouped under missions.
And so it just comes down to what it is you're trying to accomplish.
Right.
And if you do get stuck, just let us know. Now, all right, we created our funds, we created our categories. Now, we're ready to create
Your account.
Let's do this.
Account and or accounts, okay? In this case, we're just going to create the one. This was going to be our main checking. Accounts are not categories. They are not funds. They are actual accounts. If you read over there in the red, they're actually accounts at a financial institution, whether it's a credit card, whether it is a checking account, a savings account, a money market, a CD, it has an account number. That's what you're using.
Okay, perfect. Now, when you name your account, like we always recommend just naming like B of A and then the last digits of the account number, or if you want to put B of A checking.
I would put checking or savings if they're at the same
whatever
bank.
the name of your account is. It really just comes down to how many accounts your church has. If you only have a couple, then you probably could just do checking and then the last four digits, savings, all that. So I'll put that here. All right, now asset type. What kind of asset is this, Lori?
This is hard. This is hard money. This is actually your assets of the cash that you have on hand. So it is an asset account. Okay. It's not a liability like a credit card or a car loan or a mortgage. Okay. The beginning balance is crucial. Your beginning balance transaction is going to be pulled directly from your bank statement.
Okay.
It is going to be on the date of the bank statement, the ending date. If you don't have that information starting out, you can put $1 in here. You're going to edit this as soon as you create the account anyway to get your monies into the correct categories and funds, because typically a bank balance is not just general offerings.
Yes.
Okay?
Okay. And so to start this out, what should I put for my beginning balance, Lori?
I put $1.
$1. All right. $1. And then beginning date?
That you're going to pull from your bank statement. If you don't have your bank statement in hand when you're doing this, that is okay. You can put today's date in. This transaction is going to be a reconciled transaction. It is the only reconciled transaction that is editable. Not
Editable.
edible, but editable.
Editable.
Okay.
All right, now category, general offerings.
This is just to say this is the basis of this account. Again, this is going to change, so therefore you can set it with general offerings and general fund. Checking is usually general fund.
Okay.
And just create the account.
And then general fund, create account, and I just created my account.
Now, you say, Lori, well, I created funds, but they're not showing up on my fund summary. Because they don't have any money in them yet, they will not show on your fund summary. So Wes, now the next thing you would do is you would go into your Bank of America checking account.
Okay.
You would edit this transaction. Notice the R.
Okay.
Okay. Double click it or click it single and edit. And then you would be able to go in and add the line items for the details that you're pulling off of your Excel spreadsheet or out of your budget or wherever you're storing this money, you know, because everybody has records somewhere of how much they have in missions, how much they have in the building program, how much. So you're going to edit this and add those line items to come up with the total that you actually have in the bank that you're pulling from your bank statement from last month.
Okay. And so just to give an example here, Lori, so I've got my date.
Your date would change. You would change it to typically the last ending date on your bank statement. So that would be December 30th or December 31st. Okay? It is a deposit, but keep in mind, if you don't change this date and you start January 1st, it's going to look like you had just a plethora of money come in on January 1st for the year. It's going to mess up your budgets and everything because you didn't have an influx of money come in. This money was already sitting there.
Correct.
Thus, the day of the bank statement ending date.
Okay, and then I'll just say deposit, and then reference type for this situation.
You don't even have to put anything there because your payee is your beginning balance. It says what it is.
Okay, perfect.
Okay. For the entrance here, there are going to be general offerings, okay, that you enter. I don't know how much that totals in your bank account, but you're going to have to figure that out based on whatever that balance is that you pull off of your bank statement.
Okay.
In this case, just say $10,000.
All right, so $10,000.
Okay. Add a line for me.
All right.
You would add your missions. Go ahead and choose your category, Wes.
Oh, okay.
So if you have a local missions category, and in this case, we don't have all of our categories in place. We only are using what we have. So this is not concrete. This is just an example.
Just to give an example.
Okay. When you choose local missions, it's automatically going to grab that default fund for you because if your categories are set up right, you don't have to keep changing things.
That's right.
Remember, that's the fun part of this.
It's so fun.
So then you add whatever you have in local missions. Okay. And you just keep adding your line items until you get to the total of your bank statement.
And so, for example, if I had 4 different funds and I had the categories coinciding with them, I would add them all. And then once I'm done.
Well, what's something that's really cool that you could do? Because we have this feature in ChurchTrac accounting where you can add a file.
Yes.
So if you're starting, you may want to take that bank statement with that ending balance and all that information, scan it or download it from your bank and attach it here so that you know, as the treasurer this time, what happened. And then treasurers 5 or 6 years in the future may have to go back and reference this and they're like, where'd they get this information from?
Yeah.
Now you have a bank statement there. Why not utilize the technology that's there for you?
Perfect. And so once I get all that done, I select close, and there we go.
Now, go back to your accounts tab for me.
Okay.
And you'll see that your missions fund has been updated as well.
There you go. So no longer $0.
Is that easy?
Perfect.
So if the foundation is built, accounting is smooth. And you say, Wes, the next question would be, what about my transactions? How do I get money in and out? Giving is where you will create deposits and put that information directly into your accounting screen from the giving screen with all the details that you enter. Those deposits can be created using the Create Deposit button, updates in the accounting screen, and provides all the details. If you don't click the Create Deposit button, the details stay in the giving screen.
Yes.
Okay? If you don't also do that, I had a ticket this week, a support ticket that came in that said, my accounting's not updating. You do have to click the Create Deposit button unless you're using online giving, and those transactions will automatically create in ChurchTrac.
And we've got some videos too that show this whole thing about how to create deposits in the software. And then a couple things worth noting here. As you start adding different accounts, different funds, the dashboard here is going to show you these different graphs and everything, which is really nice because you log into ChurchTrac.
It's a visual.
You see all these things, and I can quickly see what's happening. And even too, like if you add a liability, which we have other content that talks about how to add like a credit card liability, and you can see that negative amount for the credit card. So you can keep track of all of it.
It's important to know if you're just starting to use an accounting platform, a liability does affect your net position or your total down there. So don't get disturbed by that. It's going to take your hard money minus your liability and give you your net position. So that's why you would see those. Now, keep in mind that all of the transactions that you put in your accounting screen, whether they're income or expenditures, are going to update for all of your reports, Wes.
Oh, perfect.
They're also going to update for your budget. Okay,
Yes.
Is that something you want to talk about?
We don't have time to talk about budget. That's like a whole nother webinar there.
It truly is another webinar. Okay.
So that's basically how to set up accounting, the quick version. Obviously, there's little nuances between the things that we just did.
It takes a little bit more time than what we just did, but you get the idea.
I mean, we see a lot of churches, once they see how to set it up, they watch the video.
They run with it.
They're able to go with it, and they have everything entered super fast. And we're going to talk about some tips and tricks and things to really speed up the process of entering things and stuff. All right, so Lori, we showed how to get started and everything. I think it would be best to start talking about like really how to get the most out of ChurchTrac accounting. So that way, I always like to say that we don't want to spend too much time behind the screen. We want to spend it with our team. We want to be building the body of Christ. I don't want to be sitting behind a computer all day. So some ways we can do this, Lori, throw some ideas for me.
Okay, so Payees is a great tool, and you'll see that up in the blue bar at the top of your screen, Wes.
Okay.
Payees can be used in several different ways, and we do have a video on this. You can create them here. If you have a list of bills that you pay monthly, the electric bill, the water bill, the pastor, the yard guy, all the things that you pay on a monthly basis, and I've literally logged into people's accounts, Wes, and seen 50 things in there, and I'm like, whew.
That's a lot.
That's a lot, but they set it up for use, and that's the best part about it. I may only pay it once a year, but if I can just drop it in by selecting it out of a list, it's perfect. Okay. So when I added a payee. This will not be in your program for you, but I added the electric company payee yesterday so that you'd have a point of reference. Okay, so you create your transaction, the type of transaction. You cannot do automatic deposits using payees. It's not going to work. Okay, so these are expense transactions. Put your payee description in place. The payee mailing address. Some people use the return envelopes if they don't do everything online. This will print on the check for you. Okay. Put your category and your fund, the amount. If the amount changes and you're not on budget billing or whatever, then you can leave the amount at zero and fill it in the checkbook when you use it. Okay. I put it as a monthly bill. There are some bills that you pay quarterly and that kind of thing. So it's going to change and vary. There's not a wrong way to do it unless you just don't do it, and then it's wrong.
Now, one thing I really like when it comes to payees, I mean, you can obviously add a bunch of payees in the software right here. I can add another one. I'm going to say Jimmy's Lawn Care.
There you go.
Because that's the guy that mows our church lawn. Gives us a sweet deal, by the way. So select OK. And then I can type out everything. I can put Jimmy's address, 123 Main Street, and then whatever else, blah, blah, blah. And then I can pull in the category it's supposed to come from. So in this case, maybe
miscellaneous.
We'll just do miscellaneous.
See how you typed
fund.
it in and it started pulling the information and narrows down your...
That's a great thing. Yeah. And then I can say the amount. And so Jimmy actually charges the same amount every single month, and it's $300 a month. And
that is a sweet deal.
It is a really good deal. I used to mow lawns, and I'm dating myself now, but like I thought that was a lot back then. But all right, and then I could put a memo here if I needed a memo on the checks that I wanted to generate. Any accounting tags, which is a really great tool to really specify things going on in our accounting screen, and any notes, and that's it. So I've got that stored. But the other way too is I go to my accounts. Because let's face it, a lot of times we don't think about these payees until we're actually paying them.
Right.
So I go to my checking account, and then I'm adding a transaction, and let's say I am needing to pay our, I don't know.
Water bill.
Water bill. So water company, whatever that water company is called. And then look at this, save this payee for quick entry next time. So then I can reference the next check number here, automatically puts that in. I can start putting in my category, my fund, my amount, and then once I save this, it's saved in the payee screen.
Forever and ever, amen, until you delete it.
I can put show payee address. I can put another address here, 321 Main Street. I don't know why I like this so much. I think it's just because I really like to save time. So when I can save time, I just
Once
really
it's
appreciate
created,
that.
it's useful.
So then I go to my payees tab, and there's the water company already in there.
Wes, we want to reiterate that there will be a question and answer time at the end that you are going to be able to type in your questions. So we do have a minimum amount of people manning the chat. So please understand, if we don't get to you there, your questions will be answered at the end, and we are going to go over every question that comes in. Okay?
Yeah. Well, not as many as we can.
Well,
and some
yeah.
of them you may just need to talk one-on-one to support just because we
Right.
don't want to bring up people's account information in live here.
No.
Okay, so payees, that's an awesome one. We spent a lot of time on that one, Lori, I feel, just because that's one of those things that just saves you a lot of time.
Well, Wes, since we're doing this,
Mm-hmm.
there's a new feature, okay, called automations.
We're going to talk, we'll save some time at the end to talk about that
Oh,
because
okay.
that's going to be a big one. All right.
That's my favorite.
Payees. Another thing, too, I think that really helps churches is just getting familiar with the reports.
Oh, absolutely.
Because if you're using new accounting software, you're used to the old reports of how things were. And so I encourage you, get familiar with the reports. I know one of the things, Lori, we always talk about, especially people coming from programs like QuickBooks, they're like, well, where's my profit loss?
It doesn't look the same. It doesn't look the same. It's not going to look the same. Every program you go to is going to have their own set of reports, and the reports are going to view separately. Most accounting platforms are proprietary, so please be patient when you're looking at these reports, okay? We use different verbiage, okay, when we're looking at reports. So under General Accounting Reports, okay, you have a balance sheet. A balance sheet is the same for everybody across the board. It's a point in time that you start using the accounting platform to an end date. Okay, that's how a balance sheet works. So if you're using a balance sheet, you're just trying to get an overall view of your assets and liabilities and the funds that they're in. But the income statement for a church, this is really important because your income is what allows you to run the church. This is going to be your P&L. So if you're familiar with the term of P&L or profit and loss, the income statement is your profit and loss. Okay?
And one thing worth pointing out, too, is a lot of these reports, with the exception of a few, you can actually export. Yeah.
So a big question that we get a lot is, what report do I want to show my congregation? A lot of people default to budget reports. And budget reports are great, except for one problem. A budget report is accumulative, okay?
Yes.
It's not a month-to-month-to-month thing because a budget is not done on a monthly basis. It's done on an annual basis, split up over months. It's just averaged. So if you want to see exactly what came in and exactly what was spent during the course of a month, use your income statement, set your date range. Wes, point out that start date and end date on that.
Yes.
Set that. If that's not set correctly, you're not going to retrieve the right data. The report is only going to show what occurred from the beginning date to the ending date, and that is all. Nothing else.
Nothing more.
Nothing more.
Okay, so reports, that's a good one. Another feature, transaction attachments. That's a feature that we already talked about, but just to reinforce this, I mean, you can attach transactions. For example, like the water bill. We paid the water company.
Scan it in.
They give us a PDF via email of that invoice, drag and drop that invoice in there. We go to Home Depot because we have to buy a new door for the church, which doors are getting very expensive these days.
Yes, they are.
But I can take that receipt from Home Depot, snap a picture of my camera phone. I sound like an old person saying that, camera phone, but I snap a picture and I put that in there. So there's a lot of different types of attachments you can put in there. I've even witnessed a church put an MP3 file in there. I didn't know that was possible, but apparently you can.
You can, but I fail to see the usefulness of it. But maybe they just wanted entertainment while they were entering contribution.
Maybe it's like your favorite song that occasionally you just want to hear. All right, another really great feature, printing onto checks.
Yes. Now, this is actually very important because we get this question a lot, is does ChurchTrac accounting allow you to print a check? Yes, it does. It's got to be a pre-formatted check. It's not going to take a blank piece of paper and print all the details out. So we're not a check printing facilitator. We are a formatted check printing the data from your transactions on there.
Yeah.
It is important to note that if you create a new transaction, the trigger for the print check option is the reference number, your check number.
Yeah.
It's not going to trigger it without a check number. There are two ways to print a check, Wes. If you're paying bills, typically you just go ahead and enter all of your bills, put all of your check numbers in place, and then you close everything out.
Yeah.
That's going to be really cool because when you go to print checks at the bottom of your account register, you're going to have the option to check off. It's very faint, so you can't see it. But when you click on it, it checks it. Check them all off, send them to the printer, and it will print. Your check creation, if you will, or the type of checks that you use is also going to be something that you will see in here, okay? So you want to go down here and look at the bottom, see what size, make sure that everything prints and lines up correctly. There are check printing options in place for 3 checks on a page, a top voucher, and a middle voucher check.
Yeah, and depending if your check is kind of unique or slightly different, you can tweak
make
these.
adjustments.
So I always recommend just printing out to a sheet of paper with like a
and
test
then
check.
holding it up.
Yeah, that's the easiest way. Then once you have the settings, it saves it, and then you're done. So that's printing a check. Like if I want to print out all my checks at once, maybe I'm like running everything on Fridays. I do that.
Right.
Or you can just go right to the transaction itself.
And print the check.
Right from there. So if you're in those situations where you want to print out that one specific check, but all your other checks you want to wait till later, it's right there.
There it is.
Cool. So that's built in as well. Another great tool to really get the most out of ChurchTrac accounting, I feel, is our importing feature, because you can import your bank statement to ChurchTrac.
Yes, you can. Now, it is very important for you to note that you cannot import data from QuickBooks.
Yeah.
QuickBooks is a proprietary platform, and their software proprietary data does not talk to ChurchTrac's proprietary data. They're actually 2 different functioning software, so you couldn't do it anyway, but because of that proprietary nature, you're not going to be able to do that. Now, that being said, if you go to import your bank statements, there are multiple formats that you can use when importing your bank statement. That is an OFX, a QFX, a QIF, and a QBO. Some people say, well, that's a QuickBooks.
Aren't those like robots in Star Wars, like R2-D2?
Yeah, you would think, right? Please note, not all banks provide their bank statements in this format, okay?
Yeah.
That's what you're importing as the bank statement. If they provide you a PDF or a CSV, you cannot import those into ChurchTrac. We do not integrate and talk to your banks, okay? This is not a functionality that ChurchTrac supports because we are an international software company, and internationally banks don't work the same. So that's why we do that.
All right, another feature, talk about importing reconciliation. Why is reconciliation such a big thing? In 60 seconds, tell me why.
Okay, Wes told me not to go into mom mode, so I'm not going to go into mom mode. But reconciliation is the process of checks and balances of reconciling your month's bank statement. So every month the bank sends you a statement. You need to go through and make sure that the transactions on that statement are in fact what's in your account register, and there's nothing in addition to that, because we do see a lot of impropriety, okay? with some churches. And so you have to be careful. You want to make sure that everything is in place to check off the transactions that have occurred, whether they're giving expenses, online giving data, blah, blah, blah. You want to make sure that checks and balances, and that's important to be done monthly. Just because it clears the bank doesn't mean it was actually entered into your checkbook.
Correct. And we've got some videos that talk about like why you should be reconciling your account.
I think I did that well.
How to do it. Yeah, you did. You stayed within 60 seconds. But yeah, videos there, and I think they're featuring you as well, which is kind of funny.
Sorry guys. You get to look at me twice. Sorry.
So reconciliation. All right, now Lori, let's talk about some tips, things that I think are going to maybe help churches save them time when they're using the accounting screen. Obviously, I mean, we could sit here for hours talking about all the things we've seen churches do the wrong way and tell them how to not do the wrong way and do it the right way. But all right, tip number 1 if you pay a person or a company more than once,
Make a payee.
make a payee. And we already talked about this a lot, but I mean, payees really do speed up the process
Oh my gosh, yes.
of adding these transactions.
Yes, absolutely.
Now, the next one, we've actually decided to dedicate a little time for this because this one's so awesome. Schedule accounting automations.
I love this.
So if you have been living under a rock, or maybe you just started using ChurchTrac, you haven't had time to meander onto the settings and automations screen, we have this really great tool. Go to settings and automations and go to automations. Now, automations, accounting.
So automations is a very large elephant. We're not going into automations. We're only going to look at this specific
Yeah.
application right here. Okay, so you're going to add an automation, Wes.
Okay.
When you add this automation, okay, this is an application automation.
And we're just going to say, bill pay. And I'm just going to name it this, application automation. And again, we have videos that walk through automation, show you all the things.
All the things.
All right, so now I'm going to add an action here. My action is, what do I want to have happen? So from here, I can create accounting transaction.
It's so cool. It's so very cool.
So then from here, I can say select and configure. All right, what is this accounting transaction?
It pre-fills everything for you.
This is why we talk about payee so much. So I want that payee, and it's going to pull all the information from that payee, save that action, and then when do I want this automation to run?
Every electric bill runs at a different time of the month. So guess what? You get to choose when you want to pay the bill.
Yeah, and I'm just going to say, for the basis of simplicity, I'm going to say every month on the first Monday at 9 a.m., I want it to automatically add that transaction into my accounting screen.
This does not pay your electric bill for you. This is only a ChurchTrac feature, so please don't think that it's going to send the bill, because it doesn't do that. But it will automatically pre-fill this transaction into your account register for you, so that all you have to do on the date that you pay your bills is go in and print those checks, or remember to go electronically transfer that money.
Yeah. Now you can add additional transactions. So maybe if it's like the first Monday of every month, you have like 10 different transactions happening. We'll just add another one and just keep stacking them. Now, I want to show this just because we're talking about automations, and it's kind of like my favorite feature in ChurchTrac.
Okay.
You can also do other automations in which you can have reports get sent to people. This is huge. For those of you who are having to generate different reports to send to different people at the church, maybe you're doing this once a month, once a week, I don't know, quarterly, I can create another automation. Oh man, this is fun. All right, so I'm gonna say, I'm just gonna say accounting report, but I mean, you can name it whatever you want. And this is an application automation again, and then add automation. Now, I want to add a new action here. The action is, what do I want to have happen? Well, I want to email
an accounting
screen report. Select and configure. Okay, choose report. Now from here, I can say I want the
income statement.
Income statement.
Once a month. You have a business meeting once a month. You're accounting to the church. You need this to go to the pastor, the treasurer, whoever's facilitating the meeting.
Yeah, and then
it's a user.
You pick your recipient, and then your recipients are other ChurchTrac users. So we only have one on this account right now, but let's say you have, your pastor, worship leader, children's minister, whoever it is, your leadership, your treasurer. You can have this person, you select them, choose a date range, and I'm going to say that I want from last month. So last month's income statement.
Take the action.
Save the action, and then I can say, all right, when do I want this to run? And I can say every month on the first Monday, and we're going to give them some time to drink their coffee and everything before they see the income statement at noon-ish. Save settings, and there we go. And then I can keep stacking this, and so then, in essence, the software could automatically send all the different accounting reports I want to send to the different people, just like that.
Yes, because if the data is entered in the program, it's accessible in the reports.
Yeah. So a lot less time having to go through and drag and drop that PDF or that CSV file, whatever it is you're trying to email different leadership and stuff. Let the software do all that for you. This is where automations, I think, really shines the most, because you're able to take these mundane tasks that really don't require much brain energy. It's just clicking and doing things and typing out.
Working through the software.
Yeah, so we spent a lot of time on that tip, but I feel like that tip is going to change some lives. If we could change a few lives today, I think that's successful.
Absolutely.
So, all right, Lori, talk about accounting automations, transaction attachments. We've talked about that. This is a really good tip. The fewer the funds, the better.
Keep in mind, if you have this many accounts, okay, you may need to have a few funds. Don't go this many funds. Accounts are not fund specific. Funds are not account specific. It's not interchangeable. You can't say everything in my checking account is only general fund and everything in my savings account is only designated funds and everything. It doesn't work that way. It gets all mixed up. And if you're trying to run accounting in that manner, Wes, you're going to give yourself a headache. You're going to employ support very well, because it's going to get discombobulated, and you're going to need help figuring it out. Unless you're an extremely OCD, meticulous person, don't do it.
One of my rule of thumbs that I kind of tell a lot of people is, like, if you have more accounts than you have funds, there could be an issue. There could be. Not always, but typically.
Unless your accounts are not real accounts, typically, I mean, I think I've only seen a church that actually only has about, the most I've ever seen in 10 years of doing this is 12 to 13 accounts, because they had CDs and investments and that kind of thing. In that case, it's real.
Yeah.
But just be careful. And if you're questioning it, like, am I doing this wrong? Just reach out to us. Our team is great. They're going to help you. They want to see you succeed, and they want to see you manage this without the headaches.
Yeah, we don't want headaches. Headaches are no fun.
Headaches stink.
Now, this next tip, Lori, the more detailed your categories, the better. Now, obviously, we don't want to go down the road of, like, having a paperclip category and stuff for office supplies. But why is it so important to have our categories really detailed?
Because not all of the transactions that you write are going to have you can't memo every line item. So if you go to Walmart and your transaction encompasses buying snacks for the pastor, updating the kitchen supplies, putting office supplies in place and that kind of thing, you want to detail that transaction with that information. You know, I bought, filled up the church bus with gas. There are things that you need, but you don't need every single item listed on that Walmart receipt in your transaction, and that's why you don't do that.
All right, and then one last tip, and I think we'll spend a few minutes talking about this one because it's so important, and that's creating a budget.
Oh.
And I'm going to add a bonus tip afterwards too, but creating a budget. Lori, why is it so important to create a budget in ChurchTrac?
Well, honestly, Wes, I am, let me define myself, I am a bit OCD. I like to know that things are going well. I like to see that we have enough money to cover our bills, okay? Yeah. I have been in many accounts where churches create a budget just from expenses. But how do you pay those expenses if you don't have an idea of what is going to come in? Yeah. Some people have answered me and said, well, we're acting on faith. Well, if you have a history, okay, of your church, then you have an idea. Yeah. I'm not saying faith is bad. I'm saying that it's better to have hard numbers in place to know how you're doing. Yeah. Okay? So you can't have a $300,000 budget if your church only brings in $50,000 a year. That is an act of faith, but it's a good chance that your electric bill is not going to get paid too.
Well, God gave us the mind to think, and we need to think accordingly and not put our churches in crazy debt.
So set up your budget. It's so easy. Once you have your categories in place, remember, this is general fund. This is not all of your designations. You don't budget designations unless you say the church is going to pay out $5,000 a year in missions, and then anything above that is going to go for designations. Yeah. That's the only way that changes, okay? So when you set your budget, the very first thing you have to do is add it, okay? It defaults with a budget name, but it's just an example. It's not really there.
So we're just going to call this budget
this year.
23. There you go.
Start date. The start date depends on you guys. If you start January 1st, that's wonderful. If you start July 1st, September 1st, whenever, your start date for your budget needs to be how your church runs a budget.
So I pick OK. Now this is how fast, because I'm going to fly through it because there's one other thing we need to show. You add your categories.
You can add all categories, Wes.
And that's what I want to do. I want to be smart.
But you can add only parents, or you can add parents and subs, okay?
So we're going to add parent and subcategories. And that's why it's so important to have all your categories done ahead of time so you're not having to go back and forth and stuff. So then you have all your categories created. Now what you do, you start putting in your totals, what you are projecting for all these different things after you've taken the time to create a budget baseline and all that good stuff. Then I click close, and now I have a budget. It's ready to rock.
And it's already pre-filling with information that we just entered while we were doing this webinar.
And you have a lot of different budget reports that we can pull. And here's what's so cool, everybody. Let's say, all right, we fast forward to the next year and we want to create a budget. Well, I can just hit the clone button from the previous year's budget, clone it, and then maybe change a category or two if needed, tweak those numbers.
Right.
I'm done.
Right.
That's it.
And the fun part about this is, and I actually love budgets.
She loves budgets, everybody.
I know I'm really kind of nerdy, but when you're doing your budgets, when you go in and edit your budget, you can actually delete categories that you're no longer using that may be inactive categories will not come into your budget. Only active categories will. But what if I had a building program last year and I don't have a building program this year because we met our numbers? You don't need that category in place anymore, so you can remove it from your budget.
Yeah.
So updating your budget, making those changes is easy with the little trash can. If you don't understand the defining characteristics of the budget, we have videos on budgets. We also have help guides on budgets, and we have a support team that is well-versed in budgets. So please reach out to us, because the way you set your budget up will determine what reports in your budget.
Yeah. Now, the last tip, and this is a really, really good one. So a lot of people wonder, how is it the support team at ChurchTrac can find that transaction that I couldn't find? And my numbers are not adding up. And how in the world was Lori able to figure that out in 10 seconds? We use a tool that you have. It's called the search tool. And from here,
my favorite.
You can search any transaction. You can say, I want to find something where the payee contains whatever, the reference contains something. Maybe I want to find something that's in a particular fund, whatever it may be. Search tool is your friend. So if you're in a situation when you're like, oh man, I can't figure out why my books are slightly off. There's a certain amount of money that I'm missing. I don't know where it's at.
You can even search for that.
That's the tool we use to help you, and you can use it to help yourself as well. So, all right, Lori, we've covered a lot. When we were getting ready for this, I was thinking, how on earth are we going to cover the entire accounting screen in what we did 47 minutes?
We talk fast.
We did. We talked very fast. So, speaking of fast talking, we're going to keep talking fast. So, we're entering a new part of this time. So, if you are watching this in the future, you don't have the ability to ask us questions here in real time live. So we're switching over to what we call our Q&A mode. So I'm turning the Q&A mode on right now. The chat is going bye-bye.
Okay.
This means you won't be able to talk in the chat, but we have Q&A mode enabled. And what this means is you can ask us a question right now live. Any accounting question. Now keep in mind, we can't get into like the specifics of your church's account. If you're like needing to, like we were talking about earlier, find something because you're struggling with finding a certain transaction, reach out to our team directly. We're going to work one-on-one with you on that. But any general accounting questions, things we can talk about right here, right now, we want to answer those questions. So Q&A mode is enabled, and those questions I know are going to start pouring in. And so we're going to try to answer as many as we can. And just a reminder, everybody, our YouTube channel, we have so many videos to really help walk you through the process of all the things. And our Facebook group is amazing. I've seen so many people.
Oh my gosh.
This past couple of weeks, it has just been blowing up. People helping each other, whether it's accounting, utilizing Church Connect, which is the built-in website and church app in ChurchTrac. So really good stuff. All right, first question, I'm going to pull this one. This one's from Richard. And Richard is asking, can I delete a deposit?
Yes, Richard, you can. So provided that your user account has the delete privilege, and that's the key here, you can go into your account register. Wes, I'm going to ask you to go through that for me.
Sure.
double click the transaction. I'm a clicker, I double click, it opens the transaction. If you have the delete privilege and this transaction is not reconciled, you will have the little trash can there. You can delete the trash can. Click the trash can and it will delete the transaction. It is going to prompt you, okay? You can click the delete button. And if you're an administrator and you deleted this in errant, you can go retrieve it, okay? That's in your settings menu.
Cool.
That's
perfect. All right. Dale asked a really good question, and I think this is one of those questions that's on a lot of people's minds these days, and that is, whoops, and it just it flew to another one. Did I get Dale's question?
You got Dale.
All right. All right, can I see employee paycheck example, including quarterly taxes? That's something we actually have on our user guide that shows some of that.
It's very specific, Dale, because it's going to be based on how your transactions are entered into ChurchTrac. You are not going to be able to pull W-2s, but you will be able to pull reports to get your 941s and your totals, and that would be based on your category reports. So please reach out to support if you have questions about that, because we want to make sure that you are well versed in that and how to enter those transactions to retrieve the correct data.
All right, now I misread, and so the question I meant to pull up, accidentally pulled up Dell's before, is Gary. Gary's asking, how secure is ChurchTrac in regards to being hacked? So Gary, we have the same level of security that many Fortune 500 companies have. And we have not had any hacking happen, and we always work to ensure that that does not happen. And one of the things I always encourage churches to, especially when it comes to accounting, because you do have a lot of sensitive information you're storing in ChurchTrac, especially when you're talking about financials and also people data. One of the easiest ways to keep that data safe is to have a very secure password, and don't give out your password to other people. Create ChurchTrac user accounts, and I'm going to show this just because it's so important. But when you're creating accounts for people in your team, go ahead, create those accounts, and then you can actually set what people can and cannot do. And so if this is a person that should not have access to accounting information, I can uncheck that.
Yep.
And I can say that person has no access to accounting, no access to giving, and so that way they can't see that.
Right.
So that is a really good question that I wanted to show off there. Okay, next question. From Lucette, and that is there a way to include direct pay bills, Lori?
Lucette, this would actually be what you would set up in your payees and set that automation up that we talked about, because if you're paying directly out of your account, it's still a bill, it's still a transaction that has to be entered in the account register. So therefore, you would want to make that an automated payment that posts itself into the register on its own without you having to think about it. So you would set up your payee, then you would go to settings and automations and make that happen. Okay?
So payees, make sure you get all that set up, and then go to the automations like we showed earlier.
Correct. And that's how you would put that in place.
All right. This one's from Virginia, Lori, and Virginia is asking, can you automatically send a customized report or just the default reports?
Right now, Virginia, you can only send the default reports that are in place in the automation section. If you have a custom report that you need to send, you obviously can create an email in ChurchTrac, attach that report, and send it to a user, but that is a completely manual process.
All right. Jennifer's asking a question we're not going to answer, but I'm going to direct Jennifer to how to get that answer. How do you document assets such as the value of your building in ChurchTrac? So Lori, how do we do that?
You said you're not going to answer the question, but direct her how to answer the question.
Support. Reach out to our support for that.
Send us a support ticket. We have a response that will guide you through that process. And help you make sense of how you're going to create those accounts and categories and funds.
Yeah, there are certain things that we just don't put in our user guide simply because we don't want to just completely overwhelm people with information, especially like new people that are new to this world of accounting and managing their books. Okay, question from Patty. We have 3 checks written in December but not deposited until January. We want those checks credited to their 2022 contributions. The bank reconciliation doesn't match. Is there something we can do?
If a contributor gave in December, okay, you have to give them giving credit in December. The actual date of the deposit, it does not matter as far as those dated checks. Okay,
Correct.
that's including if they did online giving. If it was December 31st before midnight and the church received that money, they get credit on that day.
Yep.
The deposit is at the bank. So if your reconciliation isn't matching, that would indicate to me that your ending date is out of whack, or the date of the deposit in your accounting screen is out of whack. So if you have trouble with that, reach out to support. We'll be glad to investigate for you.
For sure. All right, Laura is asking a question. Laura is saying, so if we use online bill pay through our bank, can we import that information, or do we have to enter it into the transaction screen?
If it's going through your bank and it's coming out on your bank statement, you could import it. I still suggest that you enter the transactions of the monies that are being spent during the course of the month, and then use your bank import to find anything that you missed, so that when you go to reconcile, you have that data. I know that people don't want to believe that church people do bad things, but that's a checks and balances that you need in place.
Okay, from Cynthia. Lori, Cynthia is asking, I have 3 checkbooks for my general, missions, and building. Do the expense accounts get created under each account, or are they inclusive?
Cynthia, I'm assuming when you're saying expense accounts, you're talking about categories. Remember what I said, categories and funds are not exclusive to a checking account, okay? So if you have 3 checking accounts, you can use all of those categories in all of those checking accounts, okay? If you have a building, what's it say? Where'd it go?
Oh, I sorry,
Okay. If you have a missions account and you only want missions money in there, you need to move. You can deposit the money in and spend the money out of, but you need to make sure that your transactions are reflecting the correct category and the correct fund in those transactions so that they balance. Otherwise, you're going to have a mess.
All right. When we sent out the email for this, we said avoid an accounting fiasco. We definitely don't want those. All right, Patricia, did I miss the part? Is it better to enter transactions in ChurchTrac as they occur and then import and match to the bank transactions, or import bank transactions and follow up with the category matches?
Yes. I know you're like, what? So enter the transactions into ChurchTrac. Go ahead and as you spend money, you know, if you're for a church, as you spend money, you want to record those transactions. Just like you pull up your bank information on your phone and you go, okay, that my debit just cleared, okay? You have the ability on most transactions to determine what that transaction was spent on, whether it was gas or whether it was groceries at the grocery store or whatever. So you can itemize those items in your check register on your phone. You can do it in ChurchTrac as well.
Cool.
So as far as adding the categories later, if you just import your bank statement, you have to update every transaction with those categories, Wes. It does start remembering like-minded things eventually, but it's a more tedious process than just doing the transaction entry, importing the bank statements, and checking things off. Because duplicates don't import.
Duplicates don't import. All right, this is from Joe Williams. Joe is asking, is there a way to sort categories on the screen?
Yes, Joe, there is. You're going to love this. So if you go into the accounting tab and you go into your categories tab, okay, all of your categories have up-down arrows on them. When you hover over that up-down arrow, your icon changes to a hand. You hold your mouse down and move those categories into place, and we call that dragging and dropping.
So from here, I can say clergy wages I want to put down up here, or I can say let's bring it all the way down.
Yeah, don't do your categories in alphabetical order. Income categories go at the top, expense categories at the bottom.
Yeah.
Then you can alphabetize, but make that sort, because alphabetical order is pretty, but it's not functional.
It really is. And that's a lot of people have asked me the question, like, why doesn't it just do alphabetical? It's because when you're doing this stuff, alphabetical is not the most functional way, and it's actually going to take you more time, because then you're constantly going, because you're going to have a lot of categories, and
more
you're just
than
going to
you have screen.
You're going to feel like you're on Instagram, just scrolling all the time. So that's why that is the way it is, and there's how you do it. Okay, so good question there from Joe. So this one's from Anonymous. Anonymous. Can the
question.
bookkeeper not see an individual donation records?
Yes. So if you go into your user accounts under settings, you gotta find your mouse.
Yeah, we got to find the mouse. Settings and
User
then user
accounts.
accounts.
Click on a user. In this case, we only have one, and that's the admin. You don't want to take away all the admin privileges because I still can go back and put it back in. So create her a user of her own. Go down, uncheck the things that she doesn't need to see.
Yeah.
In the giving screen, if she's the one that's going to be clicking the deposit, you want to still give her limited access, okay, so that she can do that. But you don't want the name information in there. If you have a financial person that's actually clicking the create deposit button, uncheck everything except the accounting screen, but make sure that your bookkeeper does have the ability, if you'll scroll back up a smidge, Wes,
Yeah.
to edit and change records. Because if she needs to change something, she needs to be able to make that change.
Okay.
Or
Perfect.
he, I don't know. That was an assumption.
Alrighty. A lot of good questions. Now we're at noon, and I know Lori, when you get hungry, you're ready to go. So.
But Dean's got a really good question, Wes. So let's
We'll answer 5 more questions. We only have time for 5 more. And here's what we'll do. If we didn't get to your question now, just reach out to our support team.
Oh, please.
Our support team will answer your
Yes.
ticket, even during our busy time. This is the busiest time of year for us, and our support team is flying through tickets, answering them super fast. While other companies take 24 hours or 2
48
days
hours,
to
yeah.
answer your question, our team is usually answering questions within 1 business hour. They're awesome. So I just want to give a big hand for our team out there doing all the things. All right, so this one's from Dean. So Dean, why do online contributions from Stripe update in giving before accounting?
Okay, let's take. Don't hide my question because
Okay.
he's a 2-parter. So Dean, when a contributor gives, Stripe processes that credit card or that ACH entry automatically. It autofills in the giving screen. Okay. Once that contribution is processed, it fills. If you notice, if you have an ACH contributions, many times you will have an asterisk at the top. That means that contribution is pending the clearing saying, hey, the money's in the bank, okay? But once that successful rating is put on that credit card, the giver gets credit. It takes 3 to 5 days for the credit card processor to process that payment and retrieve the money from that credit card and or bank institution, okay? That's when the payout occurs. So the payout to the accounting screen does not occur until Stripe, the merchant processor, actually gets the money back from the financial institutions. Then they process the money to you guys. The second part of that is it made it difficult to reconcile before issuing contribution statements. If you are getting money from Stripe, you have the ability to set up automatic deposits into your accounting screen. The payout has no bearing on the contribution date. I don't care if they gave on 12/31 at 11/59, they get credit for that contribution in 2022.
Yep.
Okay? If it doesn't hit the bank for 2 weeks, for the church, it does not matter.
Yep. Real talk from Lori about contributions.
That's the law. That's not me. That's the law.
All right. And now Andy is asking a question, and someone else upvoted this question too. Every year we have an overage in our budget. What is the best way to account for those funds? To clarify, if we have an excess above budget of $10,000 in 2022 and use that money in 2023, will it throw off the budget report in 2023?
Yes, it will, because the budget is for an annual period of time. That's an annual period of time is 12 months. So it doesn't matter if your budget income was over or your budget expenses were over. This is a tool that helps you project for next year. Keep in mind, this does not affect your bank account. This does not affect your fund report or anything like that. That money rolls over in your bank account, but the budget can be updated for 2023 to reflect, okay, so we know that we have a little bit more income to play with. We have this money that we can use. It's not about what happened in the past. The budget is for what's going to happen now, okay, and going forward.
All right, now I'm kind of picking and choosing here. Tom asked, can I customize a quarterly report?
If it's exportable, of course you can. You just set your date range, run the CSV, and then you can make the changes needed.
All right. Here's a good question from Josiah I want to answer, and this is, what is the best way to account for petty cash box?
In ChurchTrac, obviously, there's no box that you can set in the program and put your money in. So what we have suggested to our customers in the past and going forward as well is that you take the money that you would set in the petty cash box physically in the church secretary's office, take that money and create an account for it, call it petty cash.
Yep.
Transfer the money from your main checking into that petty cash account. And then as that money is spent, enter transactions that indicate where that money went.
Yep.
Okay. Then when you need to refinance your petty cash box, you do another transaction to move that money over. But this way there's accountability. The updates occur in your budget, in all of your reports, and you know where that money is being spent, that nobody's just taking it.
That's such a big thing. And that's why categories are so important.
Yeah.
Because with those categories, I can really pinpoint all of my expenses and income.
Right.
What's happening.
And it doesn't matter if you're giving it to a homeless person for food or, a transient person for gas or whatever. You just want to account for where the money went.
Yeah. All right, one more question, Lori, and I'm going to let you pick whatever question you want to pick here. It's not that one is better than the other. We just want to see if we can answer some of the questions that we know are on a lot of people's minds that would help the most. And again, if we did not get to your question today, it's not because we didn't like it. It's just because we only have so much time, and at some time and point, we have to shut this thing down. But just reach out to our support team, and our support team will help you out super fast. Like I said, even during our busiest time of year, we're seeing replies to tickets usually within about an hour. So,
okay,
right.
So Lynn has a question. Let's see.
All right.
Okay. In Lynn's question, she said, if you set an automation for payments, can you get notified? The beautiful part about automations, Lynn, is that you can actually set actions in place that allow you to get notified. So when that transaction's entered, you can set it up to notify a user or that kind of thing. So automations are not limited to just one action. They're an amazing feature that it's really deep, and it's not something I can cover in a short period of time, as Wes knows.
Yeah.
But we have some videos on it. We have some good questions that are answered in that, and we even have recipes.
Yes, we do have recipes. All right, so one thing, I just reopened the chat here just because I want to drop a link here. I think this link is going to help a lot of people. This is a little guide we made to really just kind of help people in terms of just navigating the setup process. And it really just kind of reiterates everything we just talked about today. But this little guide is in the chat. We're also going to email it to everyone after this is done. We'll have it in as the show notes as well if you're watching this later on YouTube. But this accounting setup in 4 easy steps walks you through the process of doing that. I really appreciated the speed limit sign, speed limit 10. Slow down. If you have more than 10 funds, you probably need to try to consolidate. And as always, just reach out to us if you ever need any help with the software. Whether it's accounting, whether it's creating your church website, sending out mass text message to your people. It's an all-in-one software. It does everything you need it to do for your church.
Intentionally.
Yes, we try to be intentional with everything we do. Well, everybody, thank you so much for joining. Now, our next live stream, that is happening next week. We're going to be talking about Church Connect. Church Connect, is it an app? Is it a website? Is it a portal for your members? Yes, it's all of those things. It's built right into ChurchTrac, and join us as we show you how to build Church Connect from start to finish. We are seeing thousands of churches embrace this.
Absolutely.
Making some amazing looking church apps. And I think my favorite part about out of all of it, besides the fact it's super easy to build, is that it's included with ChurchTrac, whether you're on a standard or plus subscription, and you have access to this amazing communication tool to have two-way communication with your people.
Yes. It doesn't do accounting, but it does do giving for you as well.
Yes. And speaking of giving, we're coming out with an online giving update, and that should be hitting the place probably in the next couple days. The developer team told us to not officially put the word out yet, but it's definitely coming soon. So be watching for that. You'll see a blog post about it, and when your people go to log in to give online, they're going to see it. Some really cool stuff going on there. Lori, thank you so much for joining us today. I know you are so busy this time of year answering all the questions on the phone. I feel like you're doing like multi-million-dollar stock trades when you're talking on the phone to everybody. So I appreciate you taking the time to join us and be able to talk about accounting.
Thanks, Wes.
All righty. We'll see you all next time. See you next week.
Bye.